Testing. Welcome. I'm David Distelhorst, local history librarian at Bexley Public Library. Before we get started, I will cover some quick notes about the format of this program. This is a hybrid program, which means we have an in-person and virtual audience. There will be a presentation followed by questions and answers. For those of you watching online, please submit your questions through the Bexley Public Library YouTube channel at any time. For those in the auditorium, please raise your hands and we will bring a microphone around. This program is also being recorded and will be accessible on the Bexley Public Library YouTube channel. And now a few programs coming up. This Monday, Toby Brief, Executive Director of the Columbus Jewish Historical Society, will speak on the migration of the Jewish community in Columbus. The program begins at 7 p.m. in the auditorium and will be available online. Uncover Your House History, a class on the resources used for researching the history of a house, will be offered twice in the next week, on Wednesday, May 22nd at 2 p.m. and Saturday, May 25th at 11 a.m. Registration is required and space is limited. You can register at bexleylibrary.org/local history. Tonight is our annual preview of the Bexley Women's Club Home and Garden Tour. Next slide. If you don't have your tickets yet, they're available at bexleywomen.org/house-garden-tour or at Grader's Ice Cream or Johnson's Ice Cream on East Main Street in Bexley. Proceeds support scholarships awarded by the Women's Club. And now a few words of introduction about tonight's speaker. Amy Lauerhass attended the University of Cincinnati, where she received her Bachelor of Architecture in 1995. She received her license to practice architecture in 1998, and after 18 plus years at a small residential design firm, she founded Lauerhass Architecture in January of 2014. Lauerhass Architecture specializes in the renovations and additions of older homes and currently has projects in Bexley, Upper Arlington, Westerville, Clintonville, Grandview Heights, and Worthington. For each house, I will start out with a little bit of history of the house, and then Amy will talk about the architecture.
Sounds good. All right. I keep this on here every year. Just to sort of illustrate, along with my poster that's in my office, about how many different kinds, different styles of residential architecture there are. And there's main categories, subcategories, then subcategories under that. So it can be kind of tricky sometimes. Not every house fits into a nice, clean box, but I do the best I can. Architectural terms, I like to just kind of start out with some basic terms if you're not familiar. One of the things that people often ask about is the different terminology in roof shapes. Your most common is going to be the gable roof here, hipped roof, meaning it slopes in all four directions. Some of the other ones are a little more not as common. The gambrel roof, most people call that a barn roof. And then sort of varieties of those different kinds of roof planes. Also, these are some just general architecture terms about how houses are put together. The difference between a mullion, which is the structural member between two windows, versus a muntin, which is the dividing of the actual window pane itself. And then talking a little bit about how your roof terminates, where the fascia board is, which is typically what sits behind the gutter. The soffit is the projection out from the wall. And then this area can be, it's called a frieze trim. It can be very ornate or very simple depending on the style of your home. The rake is the roof wall junction at the gable end. and then the eaves is what overhangs the roof. The soffit is just technically just the underside of the eave. Dormers. We have a lot of great dormers in Bexley. There are three main kinds of dormers. These are elements that sit on the roof that contain a window and allow for a little bit more usable space under the roof plane. Probably the most common is just a roof dormer. It totally sits on the roof itself. Next would be a wall dormer, where it's the front face of the dormer is flush with the wall below and there's a cutout of the roof. Architects try to avoid this because it makes gutters and downspouts very complicated. And then inset is also probably the most rare. This detail is a little bit tricky and sometimes can be a source of water leakage. So this is probably the most tried and true. And then you can see here different shapes. We talked about the triangular gable roof, a shed roof, which is sloping only in one direction, a hipped roof, and then some specialties, eyebrows, and we have examples of all of these in and around Bexley. Usually I like to take a little time to talk about one more general item. Last year, if you attended or watched online, I talked a little bit about the National Trust for Historic Preservation and how you can, 3 different ways you can add on to a historic structure. This year I'm going to talk about shutters. My daughter lovingly refers to me as a shutter snob. And I am. It's something that can really bring a lot of character and extra detail to your house, color, but it's also something that can really ruin the proportions. So here's hopefully you recognize this as some bad examples. Shutters should actually look like they can close over the window. That's what they were for originally, obviously. Now a lot of them are more of decoration. If you travel abroad, you go to the Caribbean, they still use them all the time. We mostly have them for decoration. These are obviously much too small. Shutters really shouldn't be on double windows at all. I don't know what they were thinking here. You can't believe how many pictures I found of bad dormers. None of these are in Bexley, by the way, all stock photos. And then here, they have round shutters on not a round window. So just trying to imagine it fitting on the window. Here are 3 examples of really nicely done shutters. These are the 3 main types of shutters that people use depending on the style of their home. The most common would be the paneled shutter, the louvered shutter, and then the board and batten shutter. All of these are appropriately sized. If closed, they will cover the window. They also start at the right place, the top of the window, and end at the right place, the bottom of the window. These are called shutter dogs. They actually, in shutters that open and close, they hold them open. But you can get decorative shutter dogs if you have your shutters affixed to your house that aren't actually functional. They just look functional. It's kind of a really simple and inexpensive way to add a little bit of detail to your house. So next time you're on a walk, take a look at some shutters. All right, we're going to start with our homes that are on the tour, and I'll let David start.
74 South Stanwood was constructed in 1922 in the Ardmore edition. Its one-time resident, Dr. W.C. Davis, was an oculist. He was an eye doctor. He specialized in surgery of cataracts of the eye.
All right. right. This is under the main heading of eclectic houses in the English and Anglo-American period, and it's a colonial revival, which probably most of you could have guessed. It's as far as our subtypes go here, it is a side gabled roof. One thing that, let's see, some people, when we're talking about colonial versus Georgian architecture, so Georgian architecture is actually a subset of colonial genre, and actually it was pre-1900. So anything that we see now that looks like Georgian is technically colonial revival, but there are some differences. This house follows a little bit more of the Georgian framework with the single windows here versus in a colonial revival, a lot of times on the first floor, the windows are grouped together. And this is kind of showing that. About 30% of colonial revival houses are side gabled, which kind of surprised me. I thought it would be higher. But you can see here the difference between a Georgian house versus a colonial revival. This one has the one-story wings on either side, had the dormers here, and then a prominent entry. If we go back to the main house, this one is again a little more Georgian leaning because it's more a face applied, whereas a true colonial revival would typically have a more prominent entry porch. So it's a beautiful, beautiful home, and I think it's kind of a nice balance between Georgian and colonial revival. Here you can see that what I was just talking about with the exaggerated details on the front porch. These are some different kinds of entries that fit into either a Georgian or a colonial revival entrance. And you can see here there's lots of different ways to do that within the style.
'62 South Ardmore was constructed in 1927, also in the Ardmore edition. Resident William Trait was director of photography at the Columbus Dispatch.
This again is under the eclectic houses, 1890 to 1940. This is actually a Tudor house, and I think a lot of people think if it doesn't have the half timbering on it, that it's not Tudor. But there's lots of great Tudor examples that don't have that, although it is common to see this half timbering, and we will see that again on a house coming up later. This is a front-facing gable with wing, which is 40% of Tudors, the most common subtype, and it's really very similar in massing to this example. I wanted to show this just because I wanted to show how different Tudors can really be. If you look on this side, I think everyone would say, yes, definitely those are Tudors. But these are also all Tudors. One of the most common things in a Tudor home is the steep roof. So you're going to see that very often, and you can see that in all of these. Also, another common thing is the rounded front entry. That's also, and you can see that over here as well, very common. This is, we're going to talk a little bit later about the MLS digitization of a lot of sales of homes in the 50s and 60s. It's a great resource, and I love looking at the old photos of the houses and kind of comparing them to what it looks like today. They've obviously done some renovations. They removed these 2 windows for whatever was what they wanted to put in this space. They also added shutters. But the biggest thing is they took the screens off the front porch, which is wonderful. This front porch is lovely. It was never meant to have screens on the front. So I think that was a great change that they made, that some homeowner in the last 50 years has made. This is the MLS card that goes with that photo. I always like to show these. They're a lot of fun. I love to see what they think is the selling point of the house. This one said the screen porch, but whoever bought it removed that. And in the 1950s, I couldn't read the stamp, but it sold for $24,500.
.244 North Parkview was constructed in 1909 in the Bullitt Park edition. 2 of the longtime owners were both named John Hislop and John Upham. In 1922, the Hislops advertised for an experienced children's nurse.
This one was a little bit tricky. The way I've put it here is it's sort of a little bit of a melting pot, which a lot of homes in Bexley are that way since they've been added onto and renovated over the years. The overall massing of the house, the window patterns, and the symmetry of the front facade is very colonial revival. If you look at this and then we go back to the picture, you can see those ganged windows and the side-facing gable with the lower sloped roof. Double hung windows, also very common in colonial revival. When I looked at, this one didn't have an MLS card, which I was really disappointed about because I'm not sure, and I don't know if the homeowner's here and they can tell me, but I don't know that this was original. I'm probably guessing it wasn't, and that there are parts of this home that are more sort of leaning toward craftsman. It has a lower slope roof than you would typically see on a colonial revival. It has a very large roof overhang here. We talk about the soffit, how far that comes out from the wall. And it has exposed rafter tails. That's when the structure comes through and you can see it from the underside. It's a great detail. A lot of people have covered this up because it's maintenance. But that's really a calling card for a craftsman style house. So like I said, it's really kind of a melting pot. I think if I look at these kind of similar houses, my question was that front bump out, was it a covered porch at one time? Did somebody potentially screen it in and then enclose it? I do not know that, but I think it's been done very well. I love the metal roof and the way that it's curved. Again, another beautiful home.
30 North Columbia was constructed in 1900 in the Bullitt Park edition. The owner, Robert C. Kirk, was the Columbus representative of a Cincinnati tour of homes that featured paintings by world-famous artists and floral displays in each house.
Again, eclectic houses, English and Anglo-American, Tudor. This is a little unusual in that it has a single dominant mid-facade gable. which basically, it was this one right here, and it means there's a gable in the center. And this view is a little bit hard to see, but this is the gable that's in the center. And this is on a corner too, so it's kind of like which way does it face? But this is the center gable and then the two side wings. This is a phenomenal house. It is a beautiful example of Tudor architecture. I listed just a few of the things that you would see on a Tudor, typical elaborations. It's got some rounded arched entries. It's got actually two prominent chimneys, very steeply pitched dormers, the half timbering. This homeowner has decided to paint them all the same, but still a lovely detail. That's the nice thing about Tudor. The way that you paint it can make it look very different, right? You can have that half timbering really stand out with a dark brown and a cream color, or you can go more neutral as well. Overhanging gables, meaning there are smaller pieces. It has great windows. And two things that I've not talked about in any of these talks so far, two great details. A verge board, which is when a Tudor rake comes together at the top. This detail is called kind of the verge board, and typically a lot of houses, the rake trim is flush to the house. But on some of these really great Tudors, it comes out and it really becomes a decorative element. So if we go back, you can see that right here. And you can see the way that that's called ladder framing, where they kind of frame that out. And what this does is it just gives great shape and shadow, texture, just a lot of really, really great details. I could talk about this house forever. And another one of my favorite things, chimney pots. You will see these a lot more in Europe. They're kind of rare around here, but if you look in some of mostly in the northwest side of Bexley, you can see some great chimney pots. They come as simple or as detailed as you want to get, and they're just a really fun little decoration. This picture you can't see them really great, but both chimneys have chimney pots on them.
"2564 Sherwood" was constructed in 1925 in the Bexley Park Edition. The Krakow family were longtime owners. Abraham Krakow owned and operated a dry goods store for 50 years in the old Jewish neighborhood on Mount Vernon Avenue.
This is under the overall heading of styled houses since 1935. I consider this house what's called American vernacular. Some people call it builder, some people would call it like an American Foursquare. What's great about this house is it's really just very elegant in its simplicity. It's a side gable, the roof massing, the windows, the exterior materials, the porch, it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum as the one we just looked at, but just as nice in its own way. How just the proportions are spot on. It has some detail like this is called a soldier course of brick, where the bricks stand up straight. Up here right under our frieze trim, it's got a very nice detail at the soffit, but just, I say, elegant simplicity. And again, if we look at a lot of colonial revival houses and American vernacular houses took their cues from older styles, European styles, Georgian, Tudor, etc. So this house has a lot of similarities to Georgian. The single windows, we talked about that on the other house. It's funny that the diagram for the Georgian had a single center chimney, but the most common thing is to have the end chimneys on both sides, which this house has. Now, again, this is a little bit of a melting pot, American vernacular. The porch definitely isn't Georgian because, again, a true Georgian front entry would be just on the face of the house. But it has a really nice colonial revival entrance. And again, you can see some different ones here. Actually, I think this goes to a different slide. I'm going to come back to that one. Okay.
2785 Bexley Park was constructed in 1949 in the Bexley Highlands edition. Its first owner, Alvin Rubin, a developer, built the Livingston Plaza Shopping Center east of Bexley.
This one, again, is New Styled Houses. The book that I reference most often is Virginia McAllister's A Field Guide to American Houses. She calls this New Traditional. And basically, this is newer houses taking cues from the revival houses. They're not always true to the original style, and not that that's necessarily always a bad thing either. This is a French house, what we would call French eclectic. Typically, they would not have a prominent front-facing gable like this, but I actually really like it. I think it's a beautiful house. Has an amazing roof. Let's see. So it has a lot of things that are true to the French eclectic, which would be the through-the-wall dormers. We talked about the different dormers earlier. So this is typically used more with a kind of a 1.5-story versus a full 2-story house. Stone cladding, very common with French eclectic, a large prominent chimney, and varied roof lines, which this also has. The gabled section sits much lower than the main section of the house. And when I was looking at some older photos of this house on the 2007 and now, a homeowner added this roof overhang. It was an awning that was not at all true to French eclectic architecture. So I applaud the homeowner that added that, and they even used the same clay tile roof. It's got copper gutters. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. When we have these little pieces, we have to put downspouts there. So that's what makes those wall dormers sometimes a little more complicated.
947 Chelsea was constructed in 1947 in the East Lawn Edition. 947 and its neighbor 941 were built by the Midwest Improvement Company, which constructed numerous homes in the late 1940s on Grandin, Cassingham, and Chelsea in Bexley.
All right, this is another styled house, American vernacular. Like I said, some other terminology that's used. Side gable, again, simplicity in the roof, in the massing, windows, exterior materials. All of those things are simple. The other slide that was with the wrong one, this one. This was the one I wanted to show for this house because it has a great, what we call a broken pediment entry at the front door. And I think when you have a simple house like this, that really is a great addition. I don't know if it was original or not. It looks like it is to me. but it really calls attention to the front door and it makes it a special place.
2411 East Main Street is home to the Bexley Public Library. Founded in 1924, the library first opened inside a classroom at Bexley High School, now Montrose Elementary School. In 1929, it opened at its present location, which was designed by Columbus architect Robert R. Reeves of Miller and Reeves, who also designed Sessions Village. Both Sessions Village and the library are inspired by the minor French architecture, which Robert Reeves used for many homes. An addition in 1968 matched the original building's design. In 1992, a complete renovation and addition was completed, including an additional second story. Bexley Public Library is celebrating its centennial this year, so we will be on the tour.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I was letting David take the lead on the library for obvious reasons, but again, a lot of great details on this. Little things that maybe not everybody notices, but I notice. The security doors on the front have the same pattern as the railings, and they've continued that around some areas in the parking lot as well. The mortar joints in the stone are very unique. Next time you're at the library, well, you can look when you go out. A lot of times mortar is kind of inset. It's like a struck joint where you can, it sits behind the stone or brick. But this is really flush with the stone, and it even comes out a little bit in some places. It's a really great detail that I love. So I talked earlier about the MLS cards. So the Columbus Metropolitan Library has digitized the cards and photos. So you can go on their website and enter your street name. Don't enter your actual address, it just confuses it. Enter your street name, and then you can kind of scroll to your address. And if it's sold in the 50s or 60s, it probably is in there. I just think it's a lot of fun to see the comparisons. This is 959 South Roosevelt. This is a garden-only house on the tour this year, but I found the MLS card and I thought it was kind of cool to see the substantial difference in this house. For like a split second, I thought, is that the same house? Did I have the wrong address? But sure enough, it is. You can see this gable here is still here. The stone across the bottom. And then the porch on the side has been enclosed over here. Obviously, they added a second story and a front porch at one time. And I also noticed the tree. This house sold in 1957 for $21,000. I just want to thank you for coming. We'll take questions here in a minute. This is my house, which was on the tour last year, and this is the MLS card with the for sale sign in my yard.
And we can take questions.
David, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mentioned the two classes coming up, Uncover Your Home's History. We also have resources on our website that you can look at.
I thought those chimney pots were really curious. Does the smoke just come out the 3 different outlets instead of just one?
So if we go back to that photo, there we go. So those would be 3 different flues for probably 3 different things. A lot of times if you have a chimney and you look at it and there's 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 outlets, it typically would be 1 or 2 fireplaces. If you have one on the basement level and the first floor level. Also sometimes your hot water tank or your furnace vents through the chimney. If it's still the older version, we don't do that really anymore. But that could also be a 3rd outlet. So those would be for 3 different, probably in this old house in Europe, probably 3 different fireplaces.
Someone online has a question. They said it looked like the Tudor-style house had a taller chimney, and they were just curious as to if that had any historic significance.
Not really that I know of. Typically, there's a code minimum that a chimney has to be above the highest roof plane. Of course, when a lot of these homes were built, there were no building codes. It also depends on the size of the firebox. So the bigger firebox you have, the more height you need in your chimney to draft it properly. I know a lot of people in Bexley have converted their fireplaces to gas because they don't always vent properly and you get smoke coming back into your house. But that's the reason sometimes for the different height in chimneys is so that it drafts properly.
I am new to Bexley, and I'm just curious about the diamond-shaped leaded glass that is in so many homes, including mine. Do you have the history, like, do you know the history of that? Was that a local glass shop that did those windows? Like, why so many homes have those type windows in them?
I don't know who did them, but they are very, very common in Tudor architecture. So a lot of the Tudor homes have them. It's a great feature, and I think some people, a lot of times it's just on the front facade, and then the windows are simpler as you go around the sides and to the back. And so I think a lot of people that maybe have replaced their windows over the years have maintained those diamond panes at the front.
I just want to say something about the tour since we've got an audience here and you've seen some of these homes described. We do have tickets here. If anybody's interested in purchasing them tonight, you can buy them, or they're easy to get online. If you go to our Bexley Women's Club website that David had up on a slide earlier, you can take care of it all electronically. But we do have, you've noticed, we've got quite a few century homes to go with the library, which is also celebrating its centennial. So we're really excited about this and hope that we see you back on June 2nd and that it's a nice day. Pray for good weather.
Yes.
So you might have seen some blue signs. They kind of look like signs for a security company. But in white, they say Bexley Century Home, and those are marking homes that are 100 or more years old. We are currently supplying those to any house built 1924 or earlier. So if you have one of those houses and you're interested, we can get you a sign. There are more than 700 homes in Bexley that qualify for that. I don't have the exact number. I know it's over 2,000.
I don't know either.
I know it's over 2,000. So the century qualifiers haven't reached 50% yet.
One more thing I wanted to mention. This is the book that I use most of the time when I'm preparing for these talks. The Bexley Library does have this book if you want to check it out. Another great book, and this is more kind of geared toward homeowners, and it's called Getting Your House Right. And it's mainly talking about details, and there's a section on shutters. But all kinds of things, windows, front porches, railings, trim, just lots of fun details. And it's really a great guide for a homeowner because it doesn't have all the architectural gobbledygook that the other book has.
And another quick plug, Bexley just updated their residential guidelines for renovation, and we did a program earlier this year, so if you're curious as to those guidelines, you can jump on our YouTube channel and view that program.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.